everyone, and welcome to the Manuscript podcast, where we believe 21st century man controls his destiny, that his choices define his future, and that he writes the script to his own life. I'm your host and fellow man, Ruben Stamper, and as always, it is an honor, a pleasure, and a privilege to have you all here with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy this episode. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to be talking all about virtue. What is it? Why should you want it? And how do you get it? Those are the three questions that I will seek to answer in the first segment of this podcast. So let's get right into it. The term virtue is just thrown around haphazard all over the place, left and right by actors and social media influencers. I'm trying to be a virtuous person. If you do this is going to make you into a virtuous man. And then they never define what virtue is. And they don't understand. They just don't understand what it is. Now, I learned about virtue in a book called The Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle. He's a Greek philosopher. This is a big nerd moment for me. I learned about it in college. I actually became obsessed with the book. It caused me to write my own book about, half the book is dedicated to the virtues. And so I'm not going to try and define it in the hoity-toity terms that it's defined as in that book. I'm basically just an educated hillbilly. That's kind of who I am. And so I like things given to me in layman's terms, right? Just brass tacks, just say it as it is, and let's simplify it as much as possible. Like, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. That is my modus operandi. Oh, man. There's a lot of terms going on here. Okay, anyways. So virtue, what is it? The simple definition is this. Virtue is a good habit done repeatedly, so much so that it becomes an integral part of your character. I'll repeat that. Virtue is a good habit done repeatedly that becomes an integral part of your character. Now, I'll break those three segments down real fast. I said a good habit. That's very important. You can't have a bad habit and call it a virtue. A bad habit makes it a vice. Vices are bad. You do not want vices. You want virtue. So it has to be a good habit. It has to be done repeatedly, right? And what does this mean? So the best example I can give is this. I want you to imagine you have a cousin, and we'll call him Jonathan. All right, so Jonathan is an uncoordinated guy. Great dude, uncoordinated guy, and he doesn't practice basketball. But, he's a good guy. He goes along with the flow sometimes, and there's a bunch of dudes wanting to play basketball. He's like, I'll jump in. Jonathan goes out to the three-point line. Actually, no, let's call it half court. He goes to half-court line and just drains a ball, okay? All right? So he drains a ball, half-court line. So he's made a shot. And you're like, oh my gosh, Jonathan, I didn't know you were this good at basketball. And he looks at you with just wide open eyes, and he says, bro, I'm shit at basketball. I'm like actually the worst at basketball. And so everybody's kind of like, is he just being humble? And they throw him the ball again, and he proceeds to miss the next 15 shots that he takes, okay? And so he is missing everything. Like, okay, they take him to the free throw line, he's missing shots. And so the point here I'm trying to make is just because you made the one shot, it doesn't make you a good basketball player, right? So when I say that a virtue is done repeatedly, in order for you to become virtuous, you can't do one virtuous thing and then say, I'm a virtuous person. You can't do one courageous act in your life and then that makes you courageous. You have to consistently keep up with the virtue by acting in accord with it time after time after time. Makes pretty good sense, right? If you want to be a good basketball player, you're practicing time and time and time again. Michael Jordan in his prime, practicing for the Bulls just time and time and time again, in his prime. If he comes back years later, he's not going to be the same because he hasn't been practicing as much. He has a natural talent, sure, but he hasn't been practicing as much, so he's not as great a basketball player. Same thing applies to virtue. You have to do it repeatedly, right? And then the last part of that definition is it becomes so much so that it becomes an integral part of your character. So best example I can give to explain this is it's basketball. You can just relate so much to it. I'm gonna go for it. Every good basketball coach teaches their players that free throws matter. Why? Because so many games between good teams come down to anywhere from 3 to 5 points. And a lot of times you can look back into that game and say, this guy missed a free throw, that guy missed a free throw. All of a sudden we are down. We've lost 5 points that we should have had. So every good coach goes to their guys and says, when you get fouled, those free throws should be on the board automatically, objectively, where you should go ahead and count them because you're so good at them. And so he says, the coach goes to his players and he says, okay, so I want you to be amazing at free throws, so I'm going to make you practice them every single practice that we have. So that's what he does. And practice after practice after practice, he has you go to the free throw line and take shot after shot after shot, and he's critiquing your form constantly, and you're tweaking things, how it rolls off your finger, the stance you take, how much, you're transferring the energy from your feet, up through your legs and just an extension of your arm, right? So he's teaching you all these different things and these minute things you have to change because you're trying to make it big in the basketball leagues, and you have to be perfect at this, all right? You need to be a consistent free throw shooter. So the coach teaches you this time and time again, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a championship game, right? You're in a championship game, and you guys are down by 1 point, and there's 10 seconds left in the second half. All right, so the game's almost over. It's almost over. You get fouled. You're the guy at the ball. So what happens? You go up to the free throw line, take a deep breath, take the shot. Automatic. You made it. It's in. And this time, you weren't thinking about the mechanics. You weren't thinking about the minute things you had to do. You had practiced that damn shot so much that it was just ingrained in who you were as a basketball player. You go up to the free throw line, and you make the shot because that's who you are. That's what you do, right? And so because you've repeatedly practiced that, you don't have to think about it anymore. And that is a big component of virtue, is that when you take it on and you actually act in accord with a virtue time and time and time again, it becomes second nature. It just happens. You don't have to think about it. That's how you act. So that's what virtue is. It's not you're courageous one time, you do a courageous act one time and you inherently are courageous. No. Now, if you do multiple courageous acts time and time and time again, and you always act in accord with courage, then you can call yourself a courageous man. And I'll go way more into that down the road with talking about specific virtues, courage and temperance and honesty, the social virtues that they make you absolutely badass at throwing parties. That's what the social virtues are kind of about, and just being good at going to parties and having fun. So I'm really looking forward to going into all that, but those are episodes down the road. And so now I've explained what virtue is. The question now is, why should you want it? What's the point? I think with anything in life, people will tell you something's good. You should be given reasons for why it's actually good. The number one reason I would pose to another man for why you should try and become virtuous is this: it helps you to see the highest good and then to attain it. Right? You've probably heard in your life the term "don't go for the low-hanging fruit." Right? That's a expression that's used quite commonly. What does it mean? It means don't go for the fruit on the lowest branches that's not seen the sun, that's, got worms in it, that's got that bad spot on the side, it's kind of squishy, and, it's not the apple that you hope for, right? And you look up that tree and you see in the top branch that there is just this prime, beautiful, just magnificent, red, juicy apple. And that's the one you want, right? But you gotta go through some work to get to it. That's what the whole analogy is about, right? And so, you say, don't go for the low-hanging fruit. Well, virtue helps you always see the highest hanging fruit, right? It allows you to see the highest good in every situation and to try and attain it. It allows you to basically properly order things that are good so that you can reach the highest good, right? So nobody's arguing that a piece of cake is bad. It's got great flavor that can bring enjoyment. That's pleasure that you can enjoy. There's nothing wrong with that piece of cake, right? Now, if you eat 8 pieces of cake, then you've got a problem. Well, why is that? Because you're not acting in accord with temperance. Temperance would say, eat the piece of cake, enjoy it, savor it. Don't eat 8. And by the way, I'm preaching to myself here too. I'm like, when it comes to temperance and ice cream, man, I've got a vice to ice cream. If it's in the house, it gets eaten. I'm working on it. I am working on it, I promise. But I'm definitely not a case study for all this. I am very flawed in that regard, and I'm not the most virtuous man, but I'm trying. So yeah, virtue allows you to constantly see the highest good. And so, I'm trying to think of another great example would be, relaxing with your wife is a good thing, right? And just having a great time. But, if you're at a bar and somebody fuels up your wife and you don't address the situation, then you're doing a disservice to your own masculinity, and you're doing a great disservice to her. Because who wants a man that's not going to defend, his woman? No woman wants that. And so that's a time where courage would need to be employed, right? Where you need to make a call to say, I'm going to address this issue. I'm going to confront this person, and that wherever that goes is where it goes. But otherwise, you could just sit back. It's very comfortable, right? And so comfort isn't a bad thing, but when comfort calls you, it calls you away from your greater purpose, from the greater direction that your life should have, then it is a bad thing. It's objectively a bad thing. So it's like that guy fills up your wife, and you're like, oh well, that would require conflict, and I have to get up in that guy's face, and I'm just gonna leave it. And meanwhile, your wife thinks you're a wimp. Deep down inside, you're a wimp. You don't want that. You employ courage. You say, listen, it's going to be uncomfortable. I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it anyways. That's when you're employing courage. And we'll go a lot more into all these things down the road. But anyways, that's the beauty of courage. It calls you to be something so much greater than what society tells you should be, right? Society can in many ways just say, oh, this is just consume, enjoy, pleasure, comfort. And these things aren't bad objectively. They're not bad. But when they pull you away from your greater purpose and the greater meaning and fulfillment that you actually could achieve, then they are bad, and they're making you unhappy. And so virtue allows you to see through that, and then to act in ways that it guides you to act in ways that will help you achieve that greatness that you are called to. So that's why you should want virtue. In a nutshell, that's why you should want it. And then how do you get it? Okay, now that I've explained why you should want it, how do you get it? I think I've already kind of touched on this, but the key is understand the virtue, right? A guy that isn't aiming at anything is going to hit nothing every single time, right? An axe thrower doesn't know where his target is. He's not going to hit the target. So you have to understand what they are, understand what virtue is, understand what courage is, and temperance, and all these things. Actually understand them, and I'm going to try and teach these things throughout the upcoming episodes. So understand what it is, and then act in accord with what it would dictate you should do in each circumstance, right? So guy feels up your wife, you confront the other dude and you say, listen, you're going to apologize right now or we're going outside. You're at a party and you want to eat the 8 pieces of cake, but you choose to eat the 1. That's temperance. So all these things I will try and teach more about, but learn the virtue and then act in accord with it, and you will reach the highest goods that you can. So that's the segment on virtue. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it cleared up a lot of things concerning virtue and gave us a great base to work from, so that in the future we can go more in depth with talking about amazing things like courage and temperance and honesty, all the amazing virtues out there. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this segment of the Manuscript podcast, and let's move on to section 2. All right, everyone, we are on to the second part of the podcast, where we talk about a article or a trend or some kind of piece of news that concerns masculinity in the 21st century. And today, the topic of discussion is men dropping out of college. Why is it happening? Why is it happening? This is a good question, and it's what I'm going to try and answer today. And I've got a bunch of different theories. I'd love to hear what you think. I'm going to just ask you to drop your comments or your disagreements with me in the comments below. So let's get right into it. I'll start with kind of my unique perspective, I guess you would say, on college. So societally, I've always noticed that, it's been kind of a pushed message onto people, specifically in high school, is that like, you've got to go to college, go to college, go to college. And I felt that in my own high school, and I've always been kind of a stubborn ass. So when I was told that, I was like, I'm not going to college. No, thank you. And so I took a gap year after high school where I just saved money. But I do remember at my school, this is a very vivid memory I have of everybody getting up on stage, all my classmates in the senior class, and they were all on this like table wearing their merch from their specific colleges and signing, like, hey, I'm going to University of Dallas. I'm going to the University of Ohio. I'm going to this college or that, all these people would go up and sign for their specific colleges, and I was sitting there in the auditorium thinking, this is awkward. Like, I'm like one of the few seniors that is not going to college, and like the vast majority of my class went to college. The vast majority. I mean, there were like 3 kids that didn't go, and I was one of them. And so there was a weird push on a lot of high schoolers, in my opinion, to like, that's the option. This is the only choice you have. Go to college. And so I think that's weird. So I took my gap year, and then I ended up actually going to a college, and I actually learned a lot there. I applied myself very deeply. It was a rare college where they actually ask you to come up with your own conclusions about the source material provided. They don't force specific messages down your throat. I really liked that. It was one of the reasons I valued the college. So I went for 2 years, but at the end of 2 years, I was miserable. Why was I miserable? Because I'm a very visual person. Nowadays, I work remodeling. I work with my hands. I use my body. I take pride in my work. And, in remodeling, you're building things. You are making things look prettier. You're taking an old thing and making it into a new, nice thing. So I'm a visual person. And at college, I did not get a lot of that visual gratification. It was all in my brain. And I did learn a lot, and I accrued a lot of knowledge, but I couldn't see the results. And I think because of that, I felt a lack of drive or vision kind of for the future. So that's my story with college. And so, it's a weird thing because I am one of those people that went to college and dropped out. And then a lot of guys are just foregoing college completely. And so I'm going to dive into a couple of reasons I think this might be the case. And but before we do that, I do want to give us some parameters, just a little bit of the article I am talking about so you have a reference and you don't think I'm just pulling this out of my ass. Okay, so according to The Atlantic, American colleges and universities now enroll roughly 6 women for every 4 men. This is the largest female-to-male gender gap in the history of higher education, and is getting wider. Last year, U.S. colleges enrolled 1.5 million fewer students than 5 years ago, the Wall Street Journal recently reported. So credit to the Wall Street Journal for that. They're the ones who reported the 1.5 million fewer. Apparently, men accounted for more than 70% of the decline. So 70% of that 1.5 million fewer students going to college last year were men. Now, why is this? The first reason I would think of is perhaps men are looking at the job market and saying, if the goal at the end of college is to get a high-paying job, I do not need to go to college. Hot take, this is what I think happened. I think everybody started going to college, right? It's kind of the idea of like, if you're in a group of there's a group of little kids, right? And one of them has a lollipop. All the other kids are like, oh, I'm so jealous. Susie's got her lollipop. And if all the kids have a lollipop, they're all like, oh, this is pretty cool. This is, that's what's happened with degrees. All the kids have degrees, all right? All the people have degrees. And so the degrees have become less valuable. When everybody's got something, it's not really anything, okay? And so I think that is a big part of what's happened. And I think for a lot of guys, what happened is everyone went to college. They got buttery fingers. They got pudding fingers. They lost the calluses on their hands. And they started to think of manual labor as work beneath them. When personally, I think that for a lot of guys, manual labor gives you a lot of pride in what you do. And it's actually very valuable for a lot of different reasons. But I digress. So a lot of people went to college and they got buttery pudding hands, and they just started thinking that, manual labor is below them. And they were told throughout this process, if you're going to be a high wage earner, or, a valuable worker, you have to use your brain, using your body. That is below you. Using your body for manual labor, that's below you. It's a bullshit message. I'm a little biased, I will admit. But what happened was, all these people got these degrees, started thinking that manual labor was below them, and they looked up one day and they said, "Holy shit, who's going to keep our lights on? Who's going to make sure our drains aren't clogged? Who's going to fix my car?" And all these, big people walked up, all these big men walked up and they're like, "Well, I'll do it, but it's going to cost you." Why? Because the labor force is so short in that area nowadays. There's not enough guys to do the work, so they charge out the ass. That's what they do. And it's fair, because everybody decided to say, your job's not valuable. You don't really do a bunch of great work in society. And it's like, no, you are crucial to the greasing of the cogs of the wheel in society. You make this thing spin round. That's why we've got lights. That's why I've got lights on me right now. Is there are people somewhere helping create electricity for the house, right? And so I think a lot of guys looked at that and said, okay, I can go make $100,000 as a journeyman electrician or a journeyman plumber, and I can get paid while I learn. I won't get paid that $100,000, but I'll get paid as I learn, still a considerable sum. And then I'll learn, I'll get my license, and I can provide for a family. I can help other people. And I didn't spend 4 years going to a college where I would have been miserable. I wouldn't have learned a ton. And what I would have learned have been a lot of garbage. I think a lot of guys too look at the degrees and say, these prerequisites have nothing to do with the degree I'm aiming to achieve. I'm going in for construction management, and you're telling me that I have to learn this ballerina class. I mean, that's an extreme example, but this art history class. It's like, I don't know if it really applies. And in my opinion, it's a big money grab by colleges, and I think it's pretty stupid. And I think a lot of guys looked at that and said, okay, I'm not going to go do that. It's going to be a hell of a lot of money, a hell of a lot of time, where I'm really not making great money. I'm basically just spending money away. Or I could go right into a job, start making money, start to accrue my licenses, and then boom, I'm in the workforce, very well-functioning citizen, making lots of money because other people aren't willing to do my work. So I think for a lot of guys, that's what happened. And for another subset of guys, I'll read this stat. So only 27.3% of college graduates work in the field of study associated with their degree, right? So that means 3 out of 4 people are not doing what they originally thought they were going to be doing with their degree. That's not a great success rate. Now, a lot of companies these days are just looking for a 4-year degree. Why is that? In my opinion, it's because they hope that after 4 years, a person would have a general sense of how to write, how to communicate, and how to speak well. Fair enough, that may be the case. And they also may think that after getting through 4 years of higher education, one must be a hard worker and dedicated to your craft. I will tell you right now, there are a lot of people who go through 4 years of college and come out the other end and are not good workers, are not hard workers, not what a company is looking for, right? And they may have the degree, they've got the shiny piece of paper, but they're not, a lot of them aren't even great communicators, because a lot of colleges, their programs are really crappy. Like a great writing program, you should be a proficient writer at the end of 4 years of college. You should be a proficient communicator at the end of 4 years of college. And that's what a good college should do for you. And fair enough. But a lot of colleges don't do that. A lot of colleges are crappy, and they're not actually going to give you that skill set that you need to actually perform these really high functioning tasks in corporations, in businesses, and things like that. So I digress. But a lot of people get degrees that they don't ever use. And I think there's a lot of misfounded trust in what a person out of college is going to be. Now, sometimes that's the case. Sometimes it's the case that they are really hard workers and they're very eloquent, and they're also very, very good at writing, and they're good at all these math, whatever, if you're going to be an accountant, all these things, that could be the case. But for a lot of people, it's not. And I think a lot of guys looked at that and said, no, thank you. I'm out. And actually, thankfully, I will say, I believe a lot of that is changing. I think a lot of companies, because of the lack of strength of the workforce, are saying, hey, actually, if you just go, for 3 months and work on getting this certificate of this certification, we'll definitely consider you. And a lot of companies are doing that, and they're broadening their horizon of who they will let in, because they need to have, obviously, some barrier to entry, because you don't want someone who's going to trash your business and do a terrible job to come in there. But I don't think the answer nowadays is a 4-year college degree. I think there are other ways to attain that knowledge, to attain that expertise that will allow you to be a great worker for said company or, whatever place you're working for. So there is that. And then lastly, on a broader note, I think a lot of guys are not going to college or aren't even attempting to go after the trades because they are aimless and they don't have a direction for their life. If I saw a path that, I didn't know where it was going, and there's a good chance that it just went on forever and there was no end, I probably wouldn't take it. I need to be able to, you got to be able to see that there is a goal at the end of the path. There has to be direction to your life. And I think a lot of men don't have that. And so they avoid college. They avoid work in general because they don't have anything to work for. And I think a lot of that comes down to the breaking down of institutions that historically have given men a lot of meaning and worth. And it has allowed society to tell them that they actually hold an important place, as a father, as a husband, as part of a tight-knit family unit, that you have a lot of value as a man in that place. But nowadays, a lot of those institutions have been eroded, and so when you're told that if you go to the institution, you're going to be unhappy, and that the institution is faltering and is terrible, so don't go after it. But that leaves a lot of men sidelined to where they look at it and they say, well, what the hell am I supposed to do with my life? That used to be the thing that guys did, and now it's not. So what do I do? And so I think that's a big reason that a lot of guys are saying no to college, but also no to work in general. And that's a problem, and that needs to be fixed. And that's what a lot of this podcast is about, is trying to remind men that they are important to society, that they are supposed to strive for greatness, that they're called to be more than what society tells them they're capable of, and that there's a lot of meaning and value and hope in that. And so this concludes the second section of this podcast, talking about why men are avoiding college or dropping out like this guy. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed, and let's move on to the third and final section of the podcast right now. All right, everyone, I have today a very solemn poem for you all. Here we go. Taxes when you live, taxes when you die, taxes when you laugh, taxes when you cry, taxes when you spend, and taxes when you sell. I hate those bloody taxes. Let's send them all to hell. All right, just came up with that on the fly. All right, so today we are talking, if you haven't already guessed, about income taxes, and actually all taxes, because they're all bullshit. They are all insidious, evil things which downgrade the life of so many amazing American citizens and citizens all across the world. Now, income tax in particular, I think, is just so incredibly evil. Now, it wouldn't be if the government actually used your taxes for good purposes and was actually a good steward of your money, but they don't give a shit. If you think the government's doing a better job with your money than you would do, you're out of your mind. Okay? That's just the plain and simple fact of the matter. So I want you to recognize for a second. People always are saying, we need to up the wages. And I'm for people making more money. Don't get me wrong. I'm on the same boat myself. I want people to make more money. But also, wouldn't it make sense to potentially just lower the amount of taxes on your dollar? That's crazy. So instead of 25 to 35 cents out of every dollar taken. They take like 5 to 10 cents. Maybe that's a way to actually get more money back in your pocket, more of your hard-earned money. I want you to imagine that you're at your place of work, right? Maybe you're a work from home person, so you're at your house. Good for you. Or you're at your business. Let's say it's a bakery, okay? And you've been baking all week. So hard. You've been really trying to make people's lives better. Just they come in and you smile at them. You say, "Hello, sir. How can I help you today?" And they're like, "I'd like 2 chocolate long johns, please." And you're like, "Oh, here you go. Have a great day." So you're having, you have worked so hard all week and you've provided people with a great service, and your employer sends your paycheck, right? And you're walking out. Let's say he pays you in cash. So he pays you in cash, and you're walking out. And there's this guy, right? He's got like his hood over his head, and he's got his arms crossed, and he's leaning against the wall of your institution, your organization. And he's like, "Hey, you." And you're like, "Who the hell are you?" And he's like, "My name's Fred. I'm going to need a quarter of your paycheck." You'd say, "Get the hell away from me, Fred. I don't give a shit what you want. I just worked super hard all week, and you're not going to take a quarter of my paycheck. That is ridiculous." And yet, Fred beats the shit out of you and takes your money anyways. That is the government, basically, except we just let it happen. We just let it happen, right? So we don't think about, oh, just taxes. They just suck. They are what they are. And yet, it's a quarter for so many people. I mean, you look at your paycheck, and it's so much less than what it could be. It's ridiculous. Now, if income tax was the only thing you had to deal with tax-wise, okay, I could see that making more sense. But it's not. There are taxes hidden everywhere the government can hide them. Everywhere. You buy something? Oh, yeah, you're going to get taxed on that. You sell something? Oh, also, you're going to get taxed on that as well. Oh, you own something? You own a house? Oh, sorry, we're going to have to tax your property, okay? You want to go enjoy a couple brewskis with the boys? Oh, sorry, we're going to actually, it's bad for you to drink alcohol. It's actually a bad substance. So we're going to have to, tax that a little more. You want a cigarette? We're going to have to tax that a little more. Who gave the government the wherewithal, the ability to just say, this thing's bad for you, so we're going to have to tax it so you don't hurt yourself, okay? Not you be a good person over there. It makes me so mad. It's like, it's truly insidious. Now, I haven't even gotten into the worst of this, people. So it's like, yeah, you own a boat or a car, you're going to get taxed on it. You own a house. You don't actually own the house, because if you're not bringing enough money to cover taxes, you don't really own it. It's not yours. It's ridiculous. And yet this is just everyday life. And now I'm going to talk about really the most evil and disgusting of all taxes, which is known as the death tax. Now, in particular states across the United States, there is this policy known as the death tax. And if a person does not have a will to pass their money on to their, people they want to pass it on to, whether it's their children, their spouse, or, a distant friend that you haven't seen in years, but you want to bless them in a certain way with your money upon your passing. If you don't have a will, the government can take up to 50% of your assets. 50% of your assets. That includes your house and your car and all the things you own. It's known as the death tax, and it is the most evil, downright just evil. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, that is sickening on every level, right? You work your entire life to potentially make enough money to have enough goods to pass on to your family, people you love, and then the government comes in and says, well, you didn't write a will, so we're going to have to take 50%. What kind of bullshit is that? Like, how is that allowed? That is robbery to the highest degree. It's terrible. Now, I was talking earlier about how I want people to make more money. I truly do. I really want you all to do very well. I hope you wish the same for me. And we're always talking about raising wages. But what if, alternatively, we lower taxes? Now, a lot of states, actually not a lot, but a few states have done this. I believe Tennessee has, and I know for a fact that Florida has. So what have they done? They've eliminated income tax. Now, you can't eliminate the federal, but you can eliminate the state, right? They take away your state income tax, which is a really awesome thing. Now, here's the complaint. This is an argument I have to destroy real fast because it's really stupid, and it's keeping states like my own from eliminating income tax. But people will say, well, you eliminated income tax, but it's going to go everywhere else. It's going to spread out across property. It's going to spread out across goods and groceries and all these other, all these other commodities. And you're going to pay more taxes on those things. And my answer is yes. Yes, you will. And it sucks. But guess who gets to choose where the money goes? Show me the money, you've got the money. That's where it's at, right? So when you eliminate the income tax, you have more money in your pocket. You have more freedom to choose where that money goes. Otherwise, the government just takes it. It's gone. You won't see it again, and you're still paying taxes on these other things. So what if your Snickers bar has an extra 2 cents on it? Guess who gets to choose who buys a Snicker bar? You do. That's on you. That's on you. So, anyways, I know I'm getting a little fired up here, but taxes, they're bullshit. They're one of the most evil creations man has come up with. Okay, I mean we've got some things that are probably worse, but I mean this country, America, the country that I freaking love, was founded on the idea that hey, don't tax us too much, or else we're gonna get crazy and we're gonna throw tea out of your ships all into the harbor. Okay. That's what we were founded on. And now we're at a point where people are getting taxed at 25% if you're just a middle-class person, right? And everybody's like, tax the rich, tax the rich. Screw off. Just don't tax anybody. Hot take. Get rid of taxes. They're bullshit. They make everyone's life worse, except for people in the government who aren't even essential. You've got people hired all over the place who don't do anything. They sit in offices, and they do a terrible job. I, for instance, have a very small side remodeling business, okay, where I can just pick up odd-end jobs, and I have the legal protection of a limited liability company. To me, that mattered. So I did that, and I also wanted to learn the ins and outs of business. Creating a business with government workers, government employees, is one of the most aggravating, mind-numbing, it almost feels self-destructive thing you can do. You just sit there, sending in document after document after document, waiting for people to approve it, and then they approve it, and then the other person has to approve it, and then you send it to this guy, and they send it to that guy, and it is the most inefficient way to do things, and their online portals are absolute shit. So the government's not doing a great job. If you were, I'd be a little less hard on you, but you guys do a really, really shitty job with my money. So I'd like it back. Stop taxes. Cut it out completely. That's where I'll end this Ruben Rants section. But taxes, they're bullshit. I don't know what else to tell you. Anyways, I love you all. I hope you enjoyed this segment. All right, everyone. That's it for this episode of the Manuscript Podcast. I hope you enjoyed. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to this channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Obviously, the more this channel grows, the more men see it, and the more I can hopefully help people. I appreciate you guys watching too, because it drives me to become a better man. The more people are watching me, the more I think, oh my gosh, I need to get my act together. And so I really appreciate that. I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for watching the Manuscript Podcast. As always, remember, there's a better life out there. Let's get after it.